But unfortunately, this year, the killing of innocent Jews is no longer just history. Over the past 6 months in the U.S., 12 Jewish people have been murdered while in synagogues praying. But it's not stopped here. It's occurring in all faiths, communities, as witnessed with other church attacks here in the United States, the recent attacks on the 2 mosques in New Zealand, the churches in Sri Lanka. We've basically seen it all over the country. Anti-Semitism is on the rise all over the world. Prejudice knows no borders and threatens no people of all skin colors and faiths. But I do ask that we not let this darkness overcome us. We must show that good deeds and acts of kindness will always overshadow evil. No matter how small, they do make a difference in bringing a new light to the world. Tonight, we're honored to have Rose Rosenkrantz, a child survivor of the Holocaust, tell us her compelling and powerful story. In a few minutes, Rabbi Goldstein will introduce her. But Rose also has served as the regional director of the Marginally Living for the past 30 years. And since its inception in 1988, more than 260,000 alumni from 52 countries have marched down the same path leading from Auschwitz to Birkenau as a tribute to all victims of the Holocaust. Just to give you a brief outline before we go further into the program, after Rose's presentation, and we'll have a brief memorial service, we do have a dessert reception in the back of the social hall. Everybody is invited to please join us, and Rose will be back there and you'll have an opportunity to meet Rose. We also will be accepting donations that will be applied towards scholarships for teens to participate in March of the Living. At the end of the program, we'll have a couple of people with buckets that any donations would be greatly appreciated. If you didn't bring cash with you, we also do have opportunities for credit cards, so we will take credit cards. And then a couple of other things. As you signed in, there's a sign-in book out in the lobby. If you have not signed in already, please do so. That way when we have future programs, we'll have your name on a mailing list so we can invite you to those programs. And then also, there was a little flyer with some other Holocaust programs that are going to be on public broadcasting, so please take one of those with you. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Rabbi David Goldstein, our rabbi here at Temple Emmanuel.
I want to add a welcome to the students of All Saints who are here as well. They welcomed me earlier today when I spoke about the Holocaust, and I'm grateful to see many of them here. We changed the agenda just a little bit, or the program. Instead of having Rose speak first, we decided Rose is going to be part of the memorial service, and will speak as if it was the sermon in the middle. Until now, we have relied on the survivors of the Holocaust, the eyewitnesses, to tell their stories. On Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance Day, we listened to the testimony of the survivors with even greater attention and reverence in order to absorb what they've endured in every fiber of our being. But all too soon, the only ones left to tell the story will be those who did not live through the events themselves. It will fall to succeeding generations to repeat the narrative and to re-experience it as if they themselves were there. We just observed Passover. In the Haggadah, we are commanded to see ourselves as if we were there. To imagine for a moment that we ourselves had experienced the events. And this is what we also must do with the Shoah. We must now begin to transfer the task of Zachor, of remembrance, to the next generation. The Shoah will be remembered only if all Jews can declare, although we were not physically there, we too are survivors. we begin with the lighting of the memorial candles. We have chosen to light them by category. I'm going to ask Rose Rosencrantz to please come forward to light the first candle in memory of all the children, over 1 million of them, who were killed during the show. Please rise. I would like to ask, representing the righteous Gentiles who saved Jews and others at the risk of their own lives, representing them, we'd like to ask Brian Renz to please come forward. The next candle will be lit in memory of the liberators, those who served in the armed forces, those who were partisans, those who helped liberate the camps. I'd like to ask Floyd Stern to please come forward representing that group. The next group I want represented is the mothers and the fathers. And I apologize in advance for not having warned one of them in advance. Harris Erstroff and Tammy Saragan, would you please come forward to light the candle representing the mothers and the fathers, the parents. Often forgotten are the resistance fighters, the partisans, many of them who were Jewish. Lighting their candle, we'd like to ask Marvin Oger to please come forward. As Alan said, unfortunately, we're still seeing hatred create death. We're still seeing those who choose a path of violence against those who are different. And so the next candle is for all those who have been killed by hate since the Shoah. Most recently, we recall the murderers at Etz Chaim in Pittsburgh, the murder at Chabad of Poway, the devastation and murders that took place at the church in Sri Lanka, at the mosque in New Zealand, at the black churches in Louisiana, and all those other places whose listing has become so numerous it's impossible to go through them all right now. In their memory, we ask Barry Friedman to please come forward to light that candle. The final large candle in the back is deliberately larger than all the others. It is the candle of hope. Hope for a better future. And to light that candle, I call upon all of the students who are here today under the age of 18. For you are the future. And upon you we depend to make sure that the promise of hope is fulfilled. That you will make a difference. That you will speak out against hate and choose to stand up and be counted. We are told that as many walked to the gas chambers, they sang a song. A translation which says, "I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah. I believe, and though he tarry, still I believe." For those who know the words, please join with me. Anim, amin, anim, amin, anim, amin. Me'emuna shlema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach anim, amin. Ve'af al pi she'yitmamea, im kol ze anim, amin. Anim, amin. Anim, amin. Anim, amin. Please be seated. The song stands out because far too often people speak of the Shoah. And by the way, you'll hear me refer to it as the Shoah, not the Holocaust, for a reason. At All Saints today, I explained that Holocaust translates from the Latin into a burnt offering. I reject that concept. I do not think this is an offering acceptable to God or any God that I could ever worship. And so I use the Hebrew word, a conflagration, the Shoah. Far too often when we speak of the Shoah, we forget that there is more than one way to resist. Those who uttered the words of Anim Amin or the words of the Shema as they entered the gas chambers were resisting in a different way, spiritually, refusing to give in when they could do nothing physically to resist. As Jews entered the modern world, they wanted to believe that a nearly 2,000-year-old legacy of religious hatred had ended. The rise of modern anti-Semitism in the late 19th century did not deter the Jewish drive for complete and sustained emancipation. After World War I, German Jewry looked optimistically toward a future of increased acceptance and economic advancement in their homeland. But the evil one, who rose to power in 1933 along with his henchmen, masterfully wove together the medieval anti-Semitism of the church and new theories of racial superiority, which swept along millions of Germans who were open to accept his message or were too complacent to oppose it. Jews were considered Untermenschen, lower forms of life, to be eliminated, exterminated from the universe. Kristallnacht in November 1938 was an ominous foreboding of what was to come. A long, violent night of rampage and destruction left the ancient synagogues of Germany and Austria shattered and vast numbers of Jewish properties destroyed. The systematic elimination of the Jews began in September 1939 with the start of World War II. The final solution of the Jewish people proceeded in 3 stages, mounting in intensity in the wake of German conquests. First, ghettos were established. Then in 1941, with the invasion of Russia, Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing units, began operating. And finally, the annihilation of millions of Jews from every European country, west to east, religious and secular, Ashkenazi and Sephardi, was carried out by gassing, by slave labor, or by atrocious perversion of medical experimentations in the death camps. As the atrocities unfolded, nations and individuals stood by in silence. The Vatican also turned its back on the Jews of Europe. Elie Wiesel, who after surviving Auschwitz became a conservative rabbi here in the United States, and is famed as a prize-winning author, once said that the greatest crime was not the violence perpetuated upon others, it was standing by in apathy when you saw it being perpetrated. Yom HaShoah doesn't just call out to us, it screams that we have to learn that lesson, that apathy cannot become the norm. There are certain special individuals in our communities today who can still bear testimony. One of them is Rose Rosenkrantz. Born Reza Lukovitz, May 2nd, 1944, in Syktyvkar, Siberia. The only baby born in that slave labor camp. At war's end, hearing the devastating news about the murders of almost all their families, Rose's parents decided to leave Poland for the USA. After waiting 3 years in a displaced persons camp in Germany, they finally got the visa and they arrived to New York in 1949. Although she was a shy, introverted child, trust me, I know her very well at this point, she's not that anymore. She graduated from her college as a teacher, married the love of her life, Alan, in 1965, and raised 2 accomplished children. Michelle, who is currently the president of the Florida Bar Association, and Howard, a small business owner and property manager. In turn, they have given her 5 grandchildren. Reading of a new international student program in 1988, going to Poland and Israel, the March of the Living, Alan encouraged her to go, and Rose became one of the key educators and the regional director here in Florida. She has shared her stories to hundreds of teenagers, over 19 trips there. Moving to Singer Island in 1991, to be closer to her parents and sister, she became the director of education at Temple Beth David in Palm Beach Gardens. She arrived at the same time as I did. Rose went on to serve on the Committee for Holocaust Curriculum Development in Palm Beach Public Schools, was asked to teach Holocaust ESOL Summer Institute for Palm Beach Public School teachers. And she has taught a number of classes at the Commission for Jewish Education in Palm Beach, religious school teachers. She is a frequent lecturer to groups and organizations and has appeared on Mosaic, a Jewish TV program in South Florida. The Catholic Diocese in Palm Beach and Boca Raton, which is part of Palm Beach for those who aren't familiar, requested Rose to help develop a curriculum for Holocaust teaching for their schools. Like her parents, Rose gave her testimony to the Spielberg Archives and has donated almost 600 books of her own personal library for the Holocaust Library at Nova University in honor of her parents, Ed and Helen Lefkowitz. It's my pleasure and honor to ask Rose to please come forward at this time to give her testimony.
coming. This is easy for me, even though I've done it many times, but it's sort of feel a little bit in your heart. 1945, a young Jewish couple ventured back to their homes in Poland after being enslaved for 5 years in Siberian labor camps. They carried everything they owned, 2 pillows, a blanket, and a 1.5-year-old daughter born in the camp in Syktyvkar, Siberia. I am that child. With the war over, they were anxious to unite with their family and friends, hoping